As the fireworks go off, welcome back to the Backmarkers, the F1 podcast for new fans by new fans, and that is the end of the 2022 F1 season. My name is Mike Hurley, and I am joined by the prize award giver, Austin Evans.
Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate it. I'm happy to hand out Backmarkers of the Year to us for successfully making it through an entire season of Formula One. That was a time. Man, what a season. I feel like there's a lot we have to talk about today, although maybe not so much about the race, but what a just experience this year has been. I mean, obviously we've got the new cars, we've got the new regulations, and especially here this last race, we've got a whole lot of drivers who are saying goodbye to the grid this year. We got a lot to break down, man. We got a lot to break down.
On that note, so just to kind of tie up the loose ends as we finish the season. So it is currently expected that Daniel Ricciardo will be Red Bull's third driver, which is not actually their reserve driver. That's a different person whose name escapes me right now. Is it Lawson?
I think so. Although, was Lawson the one who got fired as the Red Bull reserve? I don't know.
Liam Lawson is currently who's currently in F2, has been added as a Red Bull reserve driver in 2022. I know who you're thinking of. Is that Vips or something like that?
Oh, Vips. Yeah, that's the guy who got fired.
So Liam Lawson is actually the reserve driver. So the way I understand it, if Sergio couldn't race, it wouldn't be Daniel Ricciardo who steps in. It would be Lawson. It seems like third driver, with the way that Helmut Marko decided to just start talking about it without permission from anyone, it's like Daniel Ricciardo would fulfill promotional obligations for Red Bull, which is, I think, genuinely, if that's the case, sadder than him just not having a seat.
I mean, look, sort of, yes. I don't think there's a clear line on Danny Rick getting any kind of Red Bull seat unless something goes really wrong. But also, I mean, you think about Red Bull, right? Like, they're an organization which have an actual lot of use of a third driver, right? I mean, think about all the promotional events they do, all the extra, like, track testing and whatnot. And also the fact that Danny Rick, let's not forget, is still an incredibly popular driver. So he still has a lot of pull.
If you're going to have someone to do your promotional events, Daniel Ricciardo is the guy. But there's just something extra sad about that for me.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, in some ways. But I guess, to me, I kind of don't see a really clear way back under the grid for Danny Rick. I think if he was going to do it, he would have had to take a lower end seat, like a Haas seat, and clearly he did not pursue that. So I don't know. I mean, everyone seems to just be like, oh, saying goodbye to Seb and everything like that. But like, I will be kind of surprised if we see Danny Rick back on the track. I mean, mind you, totally possible, but
yeah, I mean,
I would lean toward no right now.
Nico Hulkenberg. He has come back.
True. For a second, I thought you were going to say Nico Rosberg, and I got really confused. For a second, I was like, wait, what? Oh, Hulkenberg. Right. The other
I
Nico.
had to, in my mind, be like, wait, is his name Nico? Because I never think of him as Nico. And I said it, and as I said it, I was like, that's Rosberg. But no, Hulkenberg's first name is Nico. No one ever calls him that.
That's what 75 races in a season will do to your brain.
So Hulkenberg is coming into Haas. Now, I have a feeling about this one, which
Please enlighten me.
Don't think... I'm not sure Haas has thought it through completely. My kind of read on this... Nico's a great driver. My kind of read on this is like, Kevin Magnussen's done so good for them that they're like, well, let's just do that again. And I'm not sure that's necessarily going to pay off. I hope it does. I like Hulkenberg. I think he's like a nice guy. But there is, I believe, there to be some bad blood between the two of them, which also makes it an interesting...
Yeah.
There's a few teams next year where the drivers, before they even start, don't like each other, which is...
Yeah, I'm going to be excited. I mean, look, I don't think there's much of an argument to be had as far as keeping Mick. I just don't think he's really properly earned that seat. I think he's had plenty of shots, but just, I mean, the amount of carnage and damage and penalties and stuff that he's left in his wake, I think it's really a fairly easy decision for Haas to switch someone in. And Nico should be a fairly safe pair of hands. I think he's obviously a talented driver And I would be surprised if he doesn't do better than Mick, but it's clearly a short to medium term decision, right? I mean, Haas right now have two, I would say, very experienced drivers on the grid, probably two drivers who are going to retire instead of move on from the team. So to me, it's like they're probably setting themselves up to do okay for the moment, but where are they going to start sort of developing that next generation? Mind you, there's still plenty of other, Ferrari and other associated drivers who are on the, who want to be on the grid, who might find their way up into the car. But I will say, if it was a decision between Hulkenberg and Giovinazzi, I think they made the right call.
Oh yeah, I mean, if that genuinely was the only two that they were going between, I think Nico is potentially a more interesting driver. And you can be super excited next year because you're finally getting your American. Logan Sargent got his super license points today, so it is fully expected now that he will fill the vacant Williams seat. So there will be a lot of American bias now in media, and we can all look forward to that.
Yeah. Williams will obviously shoot directly to P1.
Yeah.
We're going to hear the American anthem
Freedom
on the podium every week.
He will take Freedom pits where he just gets free pits, like free tire choices. He gets a Freedom lap if he wants to, USA, A-OK. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a reason why we have 3 U.S. Grand Prix. He's guaranteed to win all 3. I mean, that's just the way it works. That's just the way it works.
He gets automatic pole position at every American Grand Prix.
And a 30-second head start. And everyone else has to start on hard tires. That's the only way he can win.
I don't know much about Logan Sargent, but he seems like a very charismatic guy. And so I think he's going to be a bit of a, like a Daniel Ricciardo type, I expect. That he will draw a lot of attention to him because he seems like a fun, charismatic guy. But I don't really know anything about him.
Same. I mean, I am always happy to see rookies on the grid. I think, there's always a chance, once you get your big break that, it's no more potential. It's no more talk about this. It's that. It's like, okay, now you're here. You've got to perform, and we can see exactly what you've got. But look, if I'm going to be real, Williams are so far off right now.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there were flashes, maybe like earlier this year and, in the past where like, oh, Williams are coming back. Williams are coming back. But I think it's pretty telling that they are trailing even, they're trailing all other 9 teams. So to me, it's like this will be a good sort of learning process for Logan, I think, kind of to let him sort of get his feet wet. And obviously he has a great benchmark with Albon, who has been consistently performing well, even though that sort of performing well, I think, ended up as 4 points for the year. But certainly going to at least be an upgrade over Latifi. Like, I think that's a fairly safe bet, which isn't exactly a huge bar to clear. But that being said, it's always, I think, nice to see another rookie on the grid. We're going to have a lot of them next year.
Alex Albon came in at 19th with 4 points. You were right. Ahead of Latifi with 2 points. And then the hilarious one for me is at 21 is Nick de Vries with 2 points, which is like a thing that feels like a million years ago now, but is just one of those fun things. And of course, our friend Nico, he is the 22nd driver with 0 points.
Because he filled in for Seb at the very beginning of the...
I think he filled in a couple of times, if memory serves. So maybe that was last year, but...
Yeah. Well, yeah, he certainly fell down a couple of times. But should we go over this race real quick?
Yeah, give us the finishing order. Yep.
So, surprise, Max Verstappen wins.
What?
I believe giving him... You know what? I know. Everyone might need to sit down for a second.
Calm down a second. Wait, what?
That's an anthem I haven't heard this year. Ahead of Charles in P2 and Checo in P3, solidifying Ferrari's very, very narrow win in the Constructors' Championship as well. Well, actually, a little bit more strong in the Constructors, but specifically...
It was still narrow.
Getting them...
Like, we came into the race where all of this stuff was still conceivably to be decided today, so that's narrow enough.
Yeah, but they did steal not only P2 in Constructors, but also P2 in Drivers, although I think the final standing was by 1 point or something? Oh, it's close. It's definitely close.
For which?
But regardless, for Charles beating out
3 points.
3 points. Yep. Yeah. So super, super tight there. Going down the rest of the order, we've got Carlos Sainz coming P4, George Russell P5, Norris P6, Ocon P7, and then we've got a couple of Astons in the points. We've got Stroll at P8, Danny Rick at least pulling some points in for his final potential race in P9, and finally the sadly departing Sebastian Vettel coming P10. And well, man, I don't think I've ever seen so much sort of love, so much attention given to a driver when they've retired. I mean, obviously that's not a common thing that drivers retire from Formula One. I mean, like I would guess 80-90% of drivers are forced out for one reason or another. So for Seb to obviously have a tremendously successful career, 4 world championships.
Yep.
And while, yeah, his Aston Martin days weren't exactly great, and you could also argue his last, especially his last Ferrari year, wasn't really particularly great either.
Nope.
But still, to see the love and the adoration and just the amount of attention that he's given, for this last weekend and everything, it was really heartwarming. I did not expect everyone to go all out, especially given that he was not the only driver who this was probably his last race with.
Clearly, there's a lot of love for him, right? He seems like a special individual. And has built a lot of very strong relationships. Like, I look at him and Lewis's relationship as a very interesting one, right? Where they were harsh rivals doing some terrible things to each other. But over time, that just their personalities drew each other together and they seem like very good friends. So I'm sure you saw the images of the driver dinner.
Yes.
That looked like fun.
Everyone's Instagram was just about
So good.
all 20 guys. Which is cool, right? I think I heard some stories that Lewis put that whole thing together to make sure that Seb had like a proper send off.
Yeah.
And
I gotta say,
I think it's really nice.
There was let's see if I can find. I'm gonna like butcher this a little bit, but like it was said that Lewis put it together and paid for it, right?
Very nice.
And there is apparently an old tradition that that there is a driver's dinner and that the champion pays for it, right?
Oh no.
And then I saw that was like a tweet that I saw, and I saw someone tweet, it's like, they asked Max, and he said, "Don't ask me to do this. I've told you I won't do this. You have my reasons. I will not do this."
Man, look, there's a whole bunch of follow-up on all the Max stuff since last week. I don't know how much we really want to go into.
I don't really want to go into it. I mean, it's been exactly as I thought it would be. It's like there's been blowback on both sides. Well, the one thing that is interesting, I don't want to get into the specific details, is that the Red Bull team released a statement, which was kind of wild, really. Like, where there was just false information in the statement about when they gave the orders to Max, and it was all very, very weird. Like, and then, it's obviously continued to be the talking point this week. Mm-hmm. Everyone keeps asking Red Bull about it. And I mean, me and you were texting, my favorite thing is like, Max keeps talking about how much he loves the team. Sergio's posting pictures on Instagram thanking Max for helping it. Like, they're trying now to do whatever they got to do to make this thing go away. Because, I mean, honestly, I think they're lucky that this happened in the penultimate race. Because I think if something like this would have happened earlier on in the season, I don't think this story would have gone away for the whole season. And so now, by and large, it will be forgotten about over the winter.
Yeah, I agree. But also, I completely stand by what we said last week. The Red Bull PR spin factory spun up immediately.
You were so right about that.
The fans got super, super toxic immediately. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of drama. I don't think we need to talk about it. Honestly, I think what we said last week, at least in my opinion, everything I said last week completely stands. And yeah, congratulations, Max. Obviously won a great championship. And Checo put a really good effort in. I don't really think, obviously, toward the end of the race, there was that call to put Checo on a 2-stop, whereas pretty much everyone else stayed on a 1-stop. And it came close to working. I don't think there's really any way you can fault. I mean, I don't know what the final margin was. It was less than 2 seconds or whatever. So Checo was really catching. Maybe a slightly weird decision, but ultimately, I don't think they were throwing away anything particularly massive there. They took a little bit of a risk. It was not massive, and they almost pulled it off. So fair play to Checo. I don't really think there's a whole lot more that anyone could have helped him with this weekend.
No, but he could have got the help last weekend, and it would have changed his outcome. Like, genuinely, like if he would have gotten what he wanted last weekend in the 2 times that he asked for it, things could have been very different.
I actually don't know if that would have given enough points, because I think he would have only gotten an extra 1 point last weekend.
Possibly, right? Like, we don't know how the rest of that race could have ended up playing out or whatever, but my point is that, like, if you're Sergio Perez, he ain't feeling good right now. I mean, 3rd in the championship is very nice, right? But 3rd in the championship is very nice if you didn't have a sniff at 2nd. And, who knows how that's going to play out going forward. It will either be a positive or a negative for Sergio and Red Bull, but we're not the ones to make that decision, right? This will either drive a wedge in the team or bring the team closer together. These things can operate in both ways. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues going into next year.
My gut is that it will fade away and it will be forced because everyone has a lot of incentive to make it work. Because if they don't make it work, then there's going to be a whole lot more drama going on.
Yep.
So yeah, I totally agree. I feel like next year they'll ask them about it a couple times at the beginning. They'll be like, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's all good," and then we'll be off.
Yeah, we had a great break. Only closer as a team we've ever been, etc., etc., etc. I think Max has probably learned a valuable lesson.
Shut up.
Well, that's what I mean. It's just one thing or another, right? He's either learned the lesson of be more of a teammate or keep it to yourself. And I think that one of the big changes in Max Verstappen this season is he has done a better job from a PR perspective. And this was the one crack in that, I think, for him this year. And so he has to bring that all in if he wants to continue being a, quote unquote role model world champion next year.
Yeah. So before we kind of wrap up the rest of the race, can we actually talk a little bit about the people who are retiring at the end of this year? So obviously this was the last race for Seb, right? And he got a point. I know he was not particularly happy about that point because he was on a one stop where that did not really seem like the strategy, maybe not, but was not ideal specifically for him. But we also have this is the last race for Danny Rick. This is the last race for Mick Schumacher, the last race for Latifi. Are you gonna miss these guys next year? Are you happy to see some new rookies on the field? Like, where are you feeling?
I will say for me, the only person that I am like, I'm sad for Daniel Ricciardo because he seems like a nice person, like genuinely. Yeah. But I think that he has run his course, right? I think that's something that's maybe been felt by him for a while. I think that it is time for a big change for him, or a break, or he moves into another sport or something like that.
NASCAR.
Right? Like he could,
NASCAR.
like you look at Romain Grosjean. It's had great success in IndyCar, right? And so like maybe it's time for him to do that. Latifi, I mean, he is already 2 years over when he should have been. I genuinely am most sad for Mick Schumacher. The amount of pressure on him is unlike the pressure on other drivers because of his name. And I don't know what his skill level is. He did not get the opportunity to show it because that Haas car just could not do it. And there was some flashes of brilliance from him. I do not remember which race it was, but when he was holding up Lewis for multiple laps and had a really great job in that race. And he had some moments this season. It was like I heard him say in interviews, he says, really, I had one season because last year we were nothing.
Yeah.
And I feel that like I really wish he could have got one more year at Haas to maybe try and show a bit more of what he was capable of. I hope somebody else gives him a shot somewhere down the line, but I don't see the likelihood of that because currently he is completely out. But this happened to Esteban Ocon too, right?
Yeah,
remember a few years ago?
Ocon had a certain Toto Wolff who was kind of trying to still hook him up with something here or there.
But we don't know what Mick has, right? I think he leave the Ferrari program? He's in the Ferrari program, right? My expectation is he left the Ferrari program because he must have some help from somewhere else. Because otherwise, why would you do that? Why would you choose to leave the Ferrari driver program?
I mean, if it was his choice, it may have just been one of those things where Ferrari are like, well, you've got your seat on the grid. We don't really need you anymore. Go out, have your fun. I did see some rumors that potentially he may actually go to Mercedes to be a reserve driver, which would, I think, be a very...
Then he has his Toto Wolff, doesn't he?
Yes, I'm not confident that he would get back on the grid. I'm a little torn on it because I think on one side it is kind of sad to see him go, but also there are a number of rookies who are, I think, very deserving of seats, right? And I think Mick had his time, and he showed that what he could do, I think, generally speaking, and I don't think he was quite at the level, right?
Yep.
It's a ruthless sport. It's you've got to perform. I mean, these are supposed to be the 20 best drivers in the world, and if you can't compete and if you're making lots of mistakes, I just don't think you deserve a seat, right? Which is sad, but it's just the way things go. So to me, it's like, it's unfortunate, but yeah, I don't know. I definitely agree with you on Danny Rick, though. I think he needs some time out. if he's going to come back, he needs to come back with a different sort of mentality or something. Because obviously the last few years have really kind of ground him down in a kind of sad way. But I think everyone is going to enjoy the break. Everyone's going to enjoy some time to reset. And I think it's always nice to see some fresh blood on the grid. I really feel like it'll be interesting to see how all the various different rookies who are coming in next year perform. I'm hopeful we see a couple people maybe starting to surprise a little bit. Maybe a certain Mr. DeVries can do something.
Yep.
I don't know.
It is worth noting that like next year's season is very rookie heavy again. Like there are a lot of rookies coming on. So what we've got Oscar Piastri, we have Nick DeVries. We have Logan Sargent, and that's it, right? It's the three of them?
Oh, I think we're missing someone.
I think so. I'm looking at a list here, which is not very helpful for me. Oscar Piastri, Gasly's moving, Nick DeVries is coming in, Logan Sargent is coming in. Yeah, that's it, because we've got Nico coming back, right?
Oh, Nico's coming back, correct.
To fill that seat. Like, and then we've got the moves, like Gasly moving to join Esteban. So,
yeah, which is going to be super fun.
That's a bunch of rookies, like 3 rookies in one season. That's a big difference. That's a big change. I'm excited about that.
It's good. I think it's healthy, right? I mean, clearly, I think there's a little bit of a lack of sort of bench of talent at the moment. I mean, you've got F2, but it doesn't look like a ton of people are going to be graduating from F2 over the next year or two.
Oh,
maybe at least over the next year.
It's just Sargent from this current crop of F2 drivers. But if you look like Piastri and Nick DeVries, they did F2 and then took a year, right? Like, and I think that's becoming more and more likely now, because I think right now maybe there's too much. The bench is too potentially big, right? Like there's too much talent because there are people that are being pushed out of the sport, as we're talking about, who, in a pinch, they still have the stuff, right? Magnussen has the stuff. He came in and he got the stuff. And he's doing a good job. So I think that is like and as as Lewis is saying, Seb will be back. So it's just a matter of time until that happens.
I feel like Seb's out of here, man. Like
I do too, but Lewis seems pretty convinced.
I think Lewis is trying to will this into existence.
Maybe. I did see.
Lewis is like, my knee hurts this week. Seb, can you drive
in the press conference, Seb was like, I tell you what, when you're ready to go, I'll swap with you. And then we can swap back again.
It's pretty funny, actually.
And from Seb, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, if I can drive a Mercedes, maybe I'll do another year. You know what I mean?
I would love to see that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I feel like Seb's probably going to take some time off, maybe come back and, have maybe an advisory role with one of the teams. Yeah. Or who knows, maybe Seb's just out of racing and he's going to go plant trees forever.
He's going to do something. I feel like over the winter, we're going to find out what's next for Seb Vettel. And I think I wouldn't be surprised to see him take some kind of job at F1 around climate. And
I can believe that. Yeah.
Because he's clearly an advocate for that. He believes in it strongly. And I think that Formula One could do with more people who are very focused on that as an idea, especially someone who has the amount of respect that he does as someone to help kind of like push that idea forward for them. So we'll see.
I think it'd be great if Seb comes in and becomes the new king of V12s and forces everyone to go back to V12s.
Okay.
They're more environmentally friendly because they sound better. And as everyone knows, good sounds are what makes the environment healthy.
I'm not touching that, but sound is something. There's something I've been meaning to mention for weeks. Why does the Ferrari sound that way?
Yeah.
Why does it scream? No other cars scream. The Ferrari screams the entire time. This is how I imagine the drivers are a lot of the time. They're just like screaming for the entire race. What is wrong with that car?
So the thing is, all of the cars on the grid have to have a number of different TV cameras, and they must have microphones hidden somewhere. To me, it sounds like wherever the Ferrari microphone is closer to where the gearbox is. That's the kind of noise that I feel like we're hearing more so than the actual exhaust, is that whiny sort of gear noise. That's the only thing I can think of, but I've definitely noticed that as well, especially when they cut to that like sort of front nose shot of the Ferraris. It's literally like...
It's just like a screech for the entire time.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, this goes... Ferrari just have general audio issues. Like, you can never understand a word from their team radios.
That's a great point. That's strategic though, Mike. They don't want...
So Sherlock in the chat is saying that Ferrari have a joined turbo and everybody else has a split turbo.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily think that's what we're hearing on the TV feed. Like, I know that that does make the Ferrari sound a little different.
Yeah.
But I think what we're hearing on the TV feed is a lot more
It's a whine. It's like
gearbox.
it sounds like just like an electrical
Yeah.
whine. It's a very strange noise.
It definitely is. It definitely is. But man, yeah, I made the mistake again this week. I ran across a TikTok of a bunch of V10, F1 cars going around, and I was like, man, I miss the old days.
You know, at the end of this episode, we're gonna look at our predictions and resolve our predictions and see who was right about this season. But I want to give you something now and say that Ferrari, that's a good looking car.
Mike, did you come around?
I've come around on it. The main thing that got me is just visually, shape-wise, it's the best one.
Yeah.
By a mile, it's the best one. Like the way it like swoops in. But yeah, because it's under lights like this. I'm like, yeah, that's a good color.
Yeah, well, I think the lights make all the
They look
cars
fantastic.
better. Like,
I love
Aston,
I love races under floodlights. I think it looks awesome.
Yeah, the Aston's good. I think if we were reviewing or re-reviewing liveries, I think the one that's probably fallen off most for me is AlphaTauri. I think that's the one that I'm like, I thought this looked really cool at the beginning. Now I'm like, it's kind of fine.
Well, there's
I
a
think
few.
The black is kind of worn off.
McLaren seemed to have been like pulling away from the orange more and more, which was a mistake.
Yeah.
I've never got used to the Alfa Romeo like wheel caps, the two-tone color, like the way it like flickers. I don't like that. Plus, I kind of got bored of the Alfa Romeo color in general.
Yeah.
I think the Ferrari has aged the best out of all of them. The Aston still looks great too, though.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
All right, should we take a pit?
Man. Let's take a pit, Mike. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
To fire up the wheel guns for the last time this year for getting a nice postseason stretch in?
I'm ready.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
This episode of The Backmarkers is brought to you by The Racing Line. Motorsport calendars are messy. Finding out what series is racing what weekend and when races begin is more challenging than it should be. The Racing Line collects the calendars of over 40 major motorsport series and combines it into one easy-to-use app. Covering series including F1, IndyCar, the World Endurance Championships, ISMA, the entire GT World Challenge catalog of series, plus MotoGP and World Superbikes for those two-wheel fans. You're missing 2 wheels, by the way. There should be 4. Anyway, I don't know. The app provides day and weekly views so you can get an easy overview of what's happening today and plan your motorsport viewing weeks ahead. Plus, you can get customized notifications that you can set to be exactly what you want before each event. Maybe you want a minute before, an hour before, a day before, 5 days before, whatever you like, and the series list is customizable so you can select the series you want to see and hide the ones you don't. I love the customization in the Racing Line. Obviously, I just have F1 set up. I can choose exactly what I want to see, and I have a 10-minute notification to alert me of all of the sessions. It's really awesome. The Racing Line supports iPhone, iPad, watchOS, and Android. And how about this? It is built by one single indie developer who began iOS development after listening to shows on Relay FM and ATP. So super awesome. I love that. Go to theracingline.app. That's theracingline.app, and there'll be a link in the show notes. Our thanks to the Racing Line for their support of this show and Relay FM.
Wow, Mike, that was a 126.
Oh man, I really found, what was it, 0126?
7.5.
I really found some speed in the last 2 races.
Mike? I think it just after 20-something races this year, you've just sharpened your skills. You've got those sub 2-second pit stops in. You've got those very fast lap times. That was only very slightly slower than the Mint last time, which was the fastest ad spot of the entire year. So congratulations, my friend.
Thank you very much. A couple of race moments to cover. There wasn't really much going on. We've spoken about most of the big things already. I guess Mercedes were maybe had an interesting set of circumstances occur for them today. Hamilton came together early with Sainz. I think that messed up something in Hamilton's car. He struggled throughout the whole race and ended up having to retire. And I did not know this. It was Mercedes' first technical DNF of the entire season. Incredible.
Wild.
Incredible.
It was like 3 laps before the end of the race.
Yep.
Like they almost made it the entire season.
Yep.
That is absolutely incredible. But if you think about it, a lot of their points this year really were picked up based on them being on the track and their rivals not making it to the checkered flag. So if you think about it like that, honestly, the fact that they got even remotely close to P2 in constructors, you can 100% chalk up to the fact that those cars were reliable. And I think both drivers did a exceptional job George, I think maybe being the slight favorite in my opinion, just because of his absolute incredible consistency. I mean, he just put it in time and time again. Of course, another P5, as if that was a surprise for him, but just a really solid job by the team. While clearly their design missed this year, and they lost a lot of performance, but every other aspect of this team shows the championship caliber that they obviously really are at. And I have no doubt whatsoever that if they do get on top of the 23 design, the Mercedes are going to be right up there. I mean, they just
it feels good
this year.
It feel confident for them, because they seem to somehow have made this car work, which is kind of incredible. Like, I don't know how they've done it, but they've done that. So I'm hoping that they're going to be going into the winter break on the right foot to make some, basically to take what they've got now and improve it the same level that everybody else will. And if they could do that, then they're going to be back in contention again next year. I think it is kind of incredible that George Russell finished fourth overall in the driver's standings, ahead of Carlos Sainz. I think that is, and handily ahead of Carlos Sainz as well. It's like 29 points clear, like really incredible. And he got a win this year, like fantastic. I mean, for me, he's my driver of the season. I know it wasn't a thing that we were necessarily going to talk about, but I think for me, he has shown what he is capable of in a way that he shouldn't have been able to do this. He is 35 points clear of Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah. that deserves a trophy all on its own.
Yeah, I think he's had an incredible season. I think it's been great. But anyway, and then really, it was the fights for points at the back between the guys retiring, and then it was just the whole race was pit strategy and who's going to get second. That was the whole race, and ultimately there wasn't really much going on. It was fine, but it wasn't. It wasn't what I was hoping. I was hoping today we were going to get some real fights up and down for second. I was hoping Mercedes were going to be in the mix, and it just didn't. It just didn't happen.
No. Look, we may be at Yas Marina, but I was like, Yas, it's time for me to take a nap in the middle of this race. Dude, I don't like this track, man. I know that they pay a lot of money to be the end of the season finale. And I know it looks cool, right? Like, with the marina there and that. Did you see that absolutely massive yacht that they had? Like, with the helicopter pad and everything, right? I was just like, God, it's cool.
I mean, that was a ship. I don't even know if you call that thing a yacht. You know what I mean? But whatever.
Absolutely massive, right? But other than that, like, the racing is just not good here, right? And I think that obviously Max just walked away with it. I mean, there was never any jeopardy at all that he was going to have a risk. And even the racing that we did have was largely, like you said, down to, is it one stop? Is it two stop? But it was, definitely not the best race of the year. It does, to me, it always feels a little bit weird that, like, the final race or the final game of any kind of series isn't climactic and exciting, right? I mean, obviously last year we got massively spoiled with a truly incredible race, full stop, not even counting the fact that that's what settled the championship. But if you look at Formula One compared to almost any other sport, you look at the Super Bowl or the NBA Finals or just a World Cup or whatever, it always kind of builds up to the final event, right? The grand finale. And I think that's where Formula One is really one of the only major sports left that does not do anything like that. I mean, you even look at something like NASCAR, which has that sort of the chase, and they kind of reset the points to really try to push it to make sure that there's real incentive for you to watch every single race right up to the end, where they can try to decide everything at that point. So it's like, I don't necessarily think it's a great idea to, with 5 races to go, everyone gets reset on points or something silly like that. Like, I don't think that's necessarily
Why would you do that?
Well, to make a dramatic finish, right? I mean, if you think about like the playoffs,
what's the point of any of it?
Well, look, I agree with you. I'm not making this argument that this is something that should happen.
Right.
But also, if you think about it, right? Like, I mean, pretty much every other sporting series, they'll have however many regular season games, and they'll go into the playoffs or the finals, whatever the case is. At which point things do kind of level up, right? Like if you were, the by far the best team all year long, you may have like a better seed going into the final 4 or 8 or whatever the case is.
I get that.
But
I get it. But it's like, I don't really think it would have changed. Let's imagine that was the case, right? And we reset it. Would it have changed much? Like maybe Mercedes would have been second rather than third. I think that this is a sport where if it's settled early, that's just how it's going to be. If it's settled late, then great. But like today was the opportunity for some late settling, but it ended up not being that exciting just because the challengers couldn't get it together, right? So like that's just the sport, you know. I find it an interesting.
Yeah, and again, I guess I don't want it to make it seem like I'm advocating for Formula One to change the finale and the last couple of races to make it more exciting. I guess my thought is, if you are going to have, try to have some kind of spectacle at the end, please make it a different track. Please make it a track that's a little bit more exciting, a little bit more fun to watch. Because like just having the end of the season go off with such a just boring finale, to me, doesn't do justice to the excitement of the sport. And yes, of course, we had a lot of great moments this year. Honestly, we had a lot of great moments this year, especially considering that Max absolutely destroyed everyone, right? I mean, I think if this was a Mercedes year, boring, right? Like, it was not exciting. But the fact that Max absolutely just wrecked everyone, and yet there were so many good moments, so many good storylines throughout. There was real jeopardy throughout the entire season. I think it was terrific. But yeah, I don't know. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth going out at the end of the season. Like, oh, well,
bit of a kind of like
a during that race,
like a wet one. It's just like,
yes.
It's just like that was that, which is a shame because, as I said, I think that there's maybe been 2 races that were boring this year, and it's unfortunate that this was one of them.
Yeah, and now we're gonna wait 4 months, 5 months or something for the next race, and it's like, well, I guess we'll remember all the good times and not the times where Austin almost fell asleep at 5 o'clock in the morning watching Abu Dhabi Grand Prix.
I want to get to these predictions, so let's run through this. Back marker of the race?
Seb.
We've got to give him something, right? Underperformer of the race?
Totally. So for me, it is Alpine, entirely because they let our boy Fernando down again.
Yep.
I talk about a dude who I bet he stepped out of that car, flipped them the middle finger, walked straight over to the Aston Martin garage, and took a seat. He's just like,
probably.
Later.
I don't imagine he would have stuck around. For me, it's Mercedes. I expected more from them today.
Yeah?
I expected more.
Oh, okay.
It
did look like that at the first stint.
It was lots of I don't particularly blame what happened with Hamilton and Sainz. Like that was just unlucky that it ended up being a bounce that put him out. But the unsafe release of George is just stupid. Like that was just stupid, And then they didn't have they didn't make what could have been better calls. You never really know. But it was more for me that like I was hoping that they were gonna get closer to second place than they did today.
Yeah. It was a little disappointing. I mean, I think Ferrari did a very good job. I think Charles did a terrific job. Who maybe he's going to get a mention in a second for another segment of this show. Yeah. But I think he did a terrific job. And I think it was one of those rare moments where Ferrari, I was about to say we're competent. I think that's a little too harsh, but did a very solid job. Yep. They did well. Yep. They had decent pace, clearly not enough.
They made the right calls.
Challenge. Yes, exactly. Right. Like they only really jumped Checo because of strategy. And that's not something that we've been able to say about Ferrari very often this year. But
no, I'm really happy that they were able to get both second places based on strategy today. Like that was what got it for them today. It's just like we are going to do whatever the opposite is, and they did the opposite, and they're like, you know what, we can just ride this whole thing home. So fine, let's go for it. So I think they did a great job.
Charles absolutely deserves P2. I mean, based on the way this season started. I mean, remember, was it like race 3 or something? Max is like, don't ask me about the championship. I don't even want to think about it. Like it was so far gone in the Ferrari sort of favor.
Those first couple of races, Leclerc seemed better in every conceivable way, right? He was faster, he was more reliable, and he seemed smarter, right? Like he was doing some really interesting things with DNS. Did you remember when he was letting Max overtake him so he could DNS slingshot him? Like stuff like that was like so like big brain driving. And then I think that Ferrari could not keep the car under him. And then also he messed up a bunch too. So
yeah, and then Red Bull took out the extra 50 pounds of weight they had hiding in the back, and then they were suddenly gone.
Nobody saw them again.
What was your favorite thing of the race?
It was Sergio chasing him down. Like it was exciting, right? Like, is he going to get him? He didn't. And I feel bad for Sergio too. But it was very exciting to watch happen. Yeah,
I mean, he came close, right? I mean, it was like, 1.3 seconds or something like that. Like, he definitely made a valiant effort, but I think it's just not quite enough. Which, to be fair, the tire offset wasn't that strong. It was only like 13 laps,
Yep.
which is something, but it wasn't like, he was coming back with some crazy thing. Like, he had a very short little middle stint. All right, Mike, we got to do this. Who is your driver of the day?
Charles Leclerc.
Oh, okay, easy. I thought you were going to say Seb. I thought you honestly were going to say Seb.
No. I mean, Seb was fun today. Seb was real fun today. But
that'd just be a pity.
yeah.
A pity one.
And that's why we gave him back marker, right? We're something. But like Charles
True.
just had it. He had it locked in the whole race. And there were points of the race where it felt like he was driving. Like he was in control. He was in charge. They were doing what he was asking of him. Like this was a good synergy between driver and team today with Ferrari and Charles Leclerc. And I think well-deserved driver of the day. He pulled that one out. Like I think it was a great drive.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a small mention you could say of Max dominating yet again, but that's boring. I would give it to Charles.
He's done it enough, right? Like we know he can do this.
Yeah.
This is just what he does. So
Max has his golden helmet is shiny enough as is. He doesn't need any more rewards, in my opinion.
Nope. Shall we review our 2022 season predictions?
So, Mike, I gotta tell you, I'm not looking forward to this. Do you think we did well?
Well, I haven't read them.
You've not? Okay.
No, so
All right,
I want
then
you
I
to
will
read
let you
yours,
lead.
and we can judge them.
Okay, all right. I'll go first. Okay, so, dear viewers, if you were, say, around for, I believe it was our very first episode of the year, we set some predictions. Now, Mike, refresh me on the exact timing. We did these predictions after preseason testing, but before the first race, or did we do it at the first race?
We had these written before the first race begun, but we
Okay.
didn't share them until the first episodes, which was after the first race.
Got it. Okay. So clearly we saw a little bit of a difference in the pecking order, and Mike and I made some very bold decisions, some bold strategy calls, some very tough personnel changes to make sure that we had the best possible predictions. So how about this? Do you want to maybe take one at a time?
Yeah.
So I'll do one, you do one,
Yep.
I'll do one. Okay. All right. My first prediction going into 2022 was that Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes will, quote, all be in it by summer break.
I don't think that happened.
I
don't think that happened.
Summer, but what I didn't describe, Mike, was that
What
summer
is it?
break. Summer break, I defined as ending in October.
Oh.
So I think I get a point there. No, I
I think
did not get that
that
one.
was kind of around the time that Mercedes started to show a change, but I don't think we could count them as in it until the last 3 weeks.
I
Right.
would agree with that. I actually would say, I think that was probably the point where Red Bull were the most dominant, where they were just absolutely leaving everyone behind. It was really only toward the end that there was a little bit of a fight back. And Ferrari were by no means in it at all after the summer break. So, all right, I'll take the L on that one. I'll say I was a little off on that. Mike, what was your prediction?
George Russell wins a Grand Prix within the first 7 races. We're both hit by the same problem here. He would have, right? If they,
Yep.
if we were both thinking different, Mercedes will get it together, but they didn't.
I mean, he did win a race this year.
Mm-hmm.
I would say you could argue that you were just overly specific. You were just an overachiever, and that you knew that George was going to win. You just didn't quite get. It was the 17th Grand Prix, right? That was what you meant. Or,
Yeah. I don't even think it was that one. It was like 19 or 20. Yeah, no, I didn't get it.
But he did win.
He did
and
win.
honestly, you bet that he would win, and I don't remember you saying that Lewis was going to win a race. So I feel like even though we both definitely lost that first round of predictions, I would give you a slight edge because you were much closer to it than I was.
Thank you. What's your next
All
one?
right. Okay, I'm reading this and I'm not feeling great. Okay, my prediction was McLaren will have a really tough year. Now, if I, just like you, had some foresight, I would have stopped talking there, and I think I could argue my way into this. But then I followed up by saying it has to be P6. If they do not get P6, I am wrong.
They were P5.
Mike, where?
P5.
Where did they come again?
I would say you were right? Like, they actually did have a really tough year. The problem is the rest of the teams below them had an even tougher one. But, like, it is wild, though. They're at 159 points. That's 5th. At 6th, Alpha's at 55. 104 points difference. So really, that is like, again, carried on Lando mostly.
100%.
I'm really intrigued to see. I mean, my eyes, they will take next year, I feel like. But we'll see. It depends on Piastri's ability, but...
Yeah. I mean, because realistically, the fact that McLaren were actually in the fight for fourth up until pretty much last week, I mean, they didn't really have much of a shot today. I mean, slight shot, but they didn't really have much of a shot. The fact that they were able to fight that long and that hard, considering that the Alpine were pretty clearly the faster car, right? I mean, yes, Danny Rick was definitely kind of pulling that average down, but Alpine had, I think, a better car this year. And while, yes, Alonso gave up a ton of points, they still, I don't think that sort of really evened things out, right? I think it was really just came down to they had a better car and they had two drivers instead of one and Danny Rick.
I want to give you some ideas here, right? So you got Alpine had 173 points and McLaren had 159, right? So of Alpine's 173 points, 92 went to Esteban Ocon and 81 to Fernando Alonso, right?
Yep.
Of McLaren's 159 points, 122 of them were Lando Norris. So,
man, I mean, I'm sure he's proud of that, but that's
I have no doubt. But like Lando was 30 points ahead of Esteban. So a better second driver, they would have been much stronger, much stronger.
I guess you could also argue that Fernando probably gave away half as many points just in unreliability. I mean, he gave up so many points. Like he would have.
I think he says 70. He thinks he lost 70 points, but I mean, what I could say he lost 1,000. I don't know. Like what?
Well, so I know that he's been saying that a lot this year. I think the race they actually did an analysis of at some point maybe in the middle of the year of roughly how many points he actually had given up. And I think he was a little over-exaggerating. But actually, I think they had, assuming that he had perfect reliability and perfect strategy and stuff, as far as the stuff that he was involved in, he actually did end up probably giving up somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe like 50 or 60 points, which I think would have taken him ahead of Lando. So very unfortunate. Obviously, this race just was the cherry on the top just to get out of Alpine. Obviously, a horrible year for him. But yeah, I'll say also incorrect with my second prediction. Mike, please bring it home and deliver some positivity and some successful prediction making.
Ferrari finished second in the Constructors' Championship.
Yeah, boy.
So I remember at the time, I was like, I don't know who's going to be first, but I think Ferrari's going to be second. That was how I felt at the time. I was still hoping for Mercedes, you know what I mean? But Ferrari had such a good, such a strong showing in the beginning. I was like, but I did not believe they would be able to get it over the line.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, right? But I think let's just be positive here and say that you absolutely nailed that one, and that was a very specific one. It wasn't like, oh, Ferrari gonna do top 3 or whatever. You said specifically second place, and while they didn't get it by a lot, they did get second place.
All right, so we are currently
right now. We could
1-0, right? I have one of my predictions. You have 0 of your predictions, so you have the opportunity to tie with your final prediction.
Okay, let me remind everyone my third and final prediction for the 2022 season. Haas will, I know I said the word probably, but
I don't understand that
probably, one. I was trying to hedge my bets. Haas will probably slide down the order through the year. Now, before I continue to make my case on this one, it's easy to forget that right out the gate, Haas looked terrific, right? Like they had good pace in qualifying.
They looked like best of the rest. They looked like they were coming for that. Yeah.
And remember those first couple of races, the Ferrari power teams, Alfa Romeo as well, were all doing really well. And we were talking about, oh man, Ferrari's power unit's so much more powerful. I think it turned out to be just some luck at the beginning of the season. But I correctly pointed out that Haas would probably slide down the order through the year. Now, if I had kept my big mouth shut and left it at that, I would be like, I should get the point for this one. But then the sub-bullet in my notes was, they'll end between P5 and P7. Mike, where did they end up again?
P8.
It was 7th, right?
P8.
Sure?
Just that.
Count that 1, 2, 3.
I don't know why you thought 5 to 7, but I also do feel like if you would have just said, if your prediction was Haas will probably slide down the order, I don't think we could have let that one in.
I know.
It's like, what does that mean?
I think why.
You know?
Yeah. So Also, I like how sliding down the order would have been like, oh, fifth place. Like that would have been sliding down the order. Like, okay, good job, past Austin. That was a very smart call.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid to say, Mike, that I think I've got a big fat 0 on my predictions for this year. Care to finish this out? What was your final prediction?
Daniel Ricciardo, Lewis McLaren.
Oh,
And I remember at the time, I think even you were giving me crap about that. And I was convinced of it, that it was going to be his final season there.
He had a 3-year role, right? Like he had his contract wrapped up, but you 100% nailed that one. Mike, I think you have officially become the team principal of the show. I think you have earned your rightful place on the top of the heap, and I will go back to serving coffee and scrubbing the garage.
I'm going to go spray some champagne when we're done today.
That checks out. That checks out. I'll clean that up too.
So that wraps up the first season of the Backmarkers. This has been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed doing this.
Yeah, man, it's wild to think. Like, obviously, we've been fans of the sport, and it's one thing to watch. I think it's a very different thing, I know, for me to actually have a show about it and talk about it. Because, like, this is something that, the whole reason we wanted to do this show is because we were doing this anyway, right? Like, we were texting through every race and chatting through everything. So for me, it's been really nice to have a venue to be able to talk not only with you, but also to talk with the whole Backmarkers audience about Formula One, one of the greatest sports on the face of the earth. So I want to give a huge and sincere thank you to not only you, Mike, for doing the show with me this year, but also to absolutely everyone who has watched the YouTube stream. Of course, we've been live streaming every episode of this, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that in the cooldown room right after the main show. But also everyone who has listened on your various mini podcast players. We really do truly appreciate it. And we hope that you enjoyed the 2022 season of Formula One as amateurly described by yours truly.
I think the thanks go to you for your commitment of waking up every week, because there have been some truly horrific hours that you have worked for this show, so I appreciate it. And also,
absolutely, man.
Thank you to all of our listeners. We will be back for the beginning of the next season. We'll share our thoughts about the season as it's coming up, and also share some more predictions for 2023. So look out for that. I guess sometime in early March or late February. We haven't worked out when we're going to record that yet, but the season.
I don't actually think, have they even scheduled the preseason test
Preseason testing is February 23rd to 25th, and the Bahrain Grand Prix is on March 5th.
Man, that is really fast.
It doesn't feel far away, does it? It doesn't feel far away. It's a 3-month gap, but it really doesn't feel very far, because come like second week of February, it's all going to start kicking off again. So really, you got like 2 months. It's like nothing. It really is nothing.
Yeah.
So we'll be back then to talk about what we think is coming up for the 2023 season. Thank you so much for tuning in for the 2022 season of the Backmarkers. Until then, say goodbye, Austin Evans.
Danke, Seb, and goodbye, my friends.
All right, stop
That
audio.
wasn't really stupid.
It was a good job.
Proud.
You did it.
Thank you. I saw the look of surprise on your face.
I couldn't believe
something
it.
dumb.
Yeah.
All right, my friends. That was a season of a show. Whew. Oh, man. Audio uploading here. And we're good. So, my friends, thank you very much for being here with us in the cooldown room. I think this might be a good time, Mike, because we were talking a little bit about it before the show, to talk about how different this has been than like any other. I know definitely for me, any other like show I've ever done.
Oh, yeah.
I know specifically for you, you don't record any of your shows like this. Right?
No, not with video. That's been the biggest change, is the video part.
Yeah, like the fact, and we were joking about it right before, the fact that we neither of us forgot to hit the record button all season, I think is...
It's a testament to us. Like the whole time we have had 100% success rate of recording the show, which that was our biggest concern going into this, is that we were not going, that we was going to be an episode where we forgot to press record. And also just like the beginning of the show, there was so many concerns about technical issues, and we didn't have any.
Yeah.
We were really worried about it. Do you remember when your camera kept freezing?
Yeah. No, we had
all that stuff. It got sorted out, but there was nothing like terrible, you know?
Yeah. So Some of the things we had to fight through, yeah, I had my camera just disconnected, which ended up being a bad USB-C hub that didn't supply enough power to my capture card. So
Ah.
ended up having to fix that. One thing that's still never been fully fixed, I'm just gonna apologize in advance for mentioning this if you've never noticed it. My frame rate has never been great. And it always bothers me. We've never quite figured out why the case that the frame rate just doesn't come through. I think I'm just losing some frames on the way over to you or something. I don't know. It's a very complicated sort of process, but. Yeah, no, I've been pleasantly surprised with how smooth the whole tech side of the show has been. So for those of you who don't know, as soon as we finish up, obviously we're in cooldown room now, so the proper show is over. So this is just being live streamed to YouTube. No one else gets to see this. You only watch this if you are, making it either all the way through the live feed or you watch the VOD. But Mike, as soon as we're done, immediately goes, chops together the audio version of the show and exports that to a variety of Relay FM backed podcast platforms of your choosing. But yeah, it's been smooth. It's been smooth. It's just been a lot of races. I think that's been the thing that really for me has just been like
it's a lot.
Wow, this is a long season.
Yeah. It is a lot. It's a lot of weekends, right?
Yes.
So
yes,
I mean, I do
definitely.
I do hope that they don't continue to push for more races. I think this is enough. Like, I don't think this needs to be an every weekend, all year sport, even if they might want it to be that. I don't think, I think this is enough.
I agree. I definitely agree. I think they're going to continue to push it. But it's a lot. Like, it's a lot to keep up with. It's a lot to watch. It's a lot as a fan just to follow, right? Especially as they bring in more sprint races. There's just so many times, which, I mean, sure, you could also argue that, a lot of other sports have, 10 games on every night or whatever. And, it's obviously different than something like baseball or whatever. But that's one of the things I love about Formula One is that you don't have to pick and choose which teams you watch or anything like that. Like, you watch everything by watching one race every couple of weeks. I'm very curious. How did everyone in the chat feel about this season? I see XI, thank you very much. Luke said you made it through the show in maybe 6 races. Oh, that's very cool. Thank you very much. It's been nice. It's been nice. I definitely feel like I've very much appreciated having the live chat as we record because I feel like there's been lots of times this year where we're recording and something has just happened after the race. Everyone's like, "Oh my God, Sebastian Vettel accidentally got a 5."
Well, we learned that, didn't we? After I think it was the first race. There was a bunch of stuff that happened afterwards. There were like penalties, there were issues with cars, and all of that was coming out. So we learned very quickly to be paying attention. And like something that I'd started doing and have been doing is like I just open up my Twitter feed at like random parts during the show just to make sure that all of the F1 journalists I follow aren't exploding in some kind of like excitement. So that was like a thing that I'd started doing a little bit. So. Sam, I watch Formula One on a service called Now TV. So in the UK, Sky has the complete like lock on Formula One. I can't get F1 TV. I can pay for F1 TV, but all I get is the stats. I don't get the feeds. So I can get live timings, but I don't know why I'd want that. But Now is like a non-satellite contract version service that Sky runs. It's just like you can get it on your phone and your Apple TV. So that's how I watch it. So we pay for their sports package for 9 months of the year, and we just cut it out during the off season. It's pretty expensive.
Yeah, I watch on ESPN via YouTube TV, which is unfortunate because it only plays at 720p. Which I don't understand why.
Yeah, we have a similar thing. We can only get 1080 on this. So we're actually considering Sky now. They've been satellite TV, right? That's their whole thing. But they now offer a streaming box called Sky Stream, so you can just watch the whole thing.
And you have to have the actual box. It's not like an app or something.
It's like a little box.
Okay.
Because the box has got a hard drive in it, so you can record onto it too.
Old school.
Yeah. So that's what I think they're doing anyway. But they have a box, like whatever. They have their own remote and all that kind of stuff. They have their own. It's like because the box runs apps. You can also watch Netflix and Disney and all that on that, right? So like it's like a whole thing.
Of course. Do you have the red button on your Sky Sports remote?
We would have the red button. We would have the red button. So but like we're thinking about it because then we could get it in ultra HD, like they call it, it's 4K. So we might do it next year. because I
Nice.
I really want to watch the races in 4K. I do. I want higher resolution for the races.
I watch it on a giant display at 720p. I'm like, yeah, this is fine. Oh man, Luke, you were very right about the silly season this year, though. The silly season
It's been extra
was
silly.
wild.
It's been great.
Yeah.
There is a
Very,
thing of
very
like, we are like, that's it now. Nothing else is going to happen now. Everyone's set. There's not going to be anything else that happens, which, you know, sometimes things might, right? Like weird stuff might happen during the winter break, but that's not going to be the case this time around.
Yeah, I agree. Oh man, yeah, yeah, a little bit different at the end. I think clearly the beginning of the season was wild. The pecking order had been completely overhauled. Red Bull were fast, but
And the cars
unreliable.
drove
Ferrari were
differently.
dominant.
We had to get used to that,
Yes.
right? Like the overtaking and all that kind of stuff. Like that made it it's made it a very exciting season. But then we got used to it. You know, like that's just how they drive now. So I think that the racing itself, the moment-to-moment racing, has been much better this year. But there hasn't been anything like last year with the rivalry. There hasn't been a rivalry this year, which I think was the thing that was missing. That, you know, like, this has been said a million times, but like last year was maybe the best year of Formula One ever.
Yeah.
Not to have that rivalry, I think, is a bit of a shame.
Yeah, I agree. I think 2021 is going to go down as, it's got to be one of, if not the best years ever, right? Just absolutely incredible racing, back and forth and back and forth. And I mean, just the amount of times I think back to the last lap of Abu Dhabi last year, like what an absolutely just, for good or bad, legendary finale for a season. Absolutely wild. Stroll finished the points more often than Ricardo, so his contract is safe. I'm sorry.
Well, that's
to say, Luke,
because
I think his contract
they're saying
is safe for other reasons.
his contract, like technically Stroll's contract comes up for renewal during the winter break.
Oh, does it really? And then you go, "Hey, Dad, can I race this year?" He goes, "Yes, son, you can."
I genuinely think at some point it will happen that he will get rid of him.
I mean, I think at some point, and I think at that point, he'll be like, "All right, Lance, can you run the team for me?" Peace. I don't know.
I just think the money that they seem to be investing.
Yeah.
The
thing is, Lance does okay enough though. Like
he is for
actually
now.
think
I think he's decent. Like I said that for a long time. He's a decent driver, but like, you know, they keep talking about, like every team does, right? Like, we're going for the wins. Well, I don't think you're going to get them with Lance Stroll. I don't. So
Yeah.
Anyway, let me go get this together.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be gone for a bit, but we'll be back at the start of the season.
Yeah, for some better, hopefully preseason guesses than we did this
I did
year.
all right, mate. I got
You
2 out
did
of 3, so
terrific.
like, you know.
I would argue you got 2.5 out of 3. You did pretty solid.
Well, you got a
half,
couple
so.
of halves too, though, even though they were. You maybe got a
Yeah.
quarter. That Haas one was a quarter. You know what I mean? Because you weren't even sure. They'll probably slide down the order.
A Pirelli tire will explode at some point throughout the course of the season. Yes, I got it.
Did that happen?
Yeah. Well, I mean, explode maybe with some outside help. But no, actually, I don't think a regular tire exploded. I think it was always debris or something else that caused the problem.
All right. Thanks, everyone. See you next
Peace,
time.
my friends. We'll see you in 2023.